Good morning and welcome to Automation Alley's Technology and Industry Reveal. So I'm Tom Kelly. I'm the Automation Alley Executive Director and CEO, and I am honored to be joined today by four local leaders from industry, academia, and government for a discussion on Industry 4.0 and our manufacturing industry resilience and innovation. So today, Automation Alley is excited to launch our 2021 Technology and Industry Report digitally on our new website. Many of the topics we will discuss here today are covered in the report, and we encourage all of you to explore it as well as the new site, as they are rich with Industry 4.0 knowledge and use cases aimed at helping you along your digital transformation journey. For attendees in the audience, check your email today for a link to the access to the report. So before we get to our panel discussion, I'd like to introduce very special guest, Congresswoman Haley Stevens, who will give our welcome. Congresswoman Stevens proudly represents Michigan's 11th district. She has been a champion for Michigan manufacturing, and don't I know it. She is a true champion. Before being elected to Congress, Representative Stevens served as the Chief of Staff to the U.S. Auto Rescue Task Force, which is the federal initiative responsible for saving General Motors, Chrysler, and 200,000 Michigan jobs. She also played a key role in setting up the Office of Recovery for Automotive Communities and Workers and the White House Office of Manufacturing Policy. After serving in the Obama administration, Congresswoman Stevens worked in a manufacturing research lab focused on the future of work in the digital age. Congresswoman Stevens currently sits on the House Committee on Education and Labor and the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, where she also serves as chairwoman of the Research and Technology Subcommittee. So thank you for joining us today, Congresswoman Stevens.
Well, thank you so much, Tom Kelly, for your leadership of Automation Alley and helping to bring Michigan into a leadership role with Industry 4.0, which has been transforming our automotive and manufacturing sector over the last decade and has clearly yielded some incredible results for our manufacturers of all sizes. You and your colleagues at Automation Alley just exemplify, in my opinion, the ability to connect, to collaborate, and to excel. And that's certainly one of the bounties that we have seen and achieved with the proliferation of the industrial Internet of Things and new technology applications that have assisted not only the design and production, but the shipment and maintenance, and what we are known for here in Michigan, which is keeping our heads down and producing great results. So it's a real honor to be here with you as you release the 2021 industry and technology report that I can't wait to delve into. I know that I really look forward to Automation Alley reports and news pieces and seminars like what you all are doing here today. And to just give you a peek into what we have been working on in Congress and what I have been so inspired to champion alongside all of you, which are these incredible R&D investment opportunities. We've got members of Congress from all different stripes who are at the table supporting the plus ups to R&D research through my subcommittee that you mentioned. We've just passed through the full committee and looking forward to a full vote on the doubling of U.S. scientific research spending and the matching of basic research dollars with technology transfer applications and new innovations in the marketplace, something that your panelists all certainly exemplify and represent in their daily work. But also as part of the bill that I just mentioned, which is called the National Science Foundation for the Future Act, I pushed really hard to make sure that we had an amendment that would focus on all different corridors throughout this country for R&D applications. And this is, a push that Automation Alley is always making, that we don't want to just see our R&D dollars concentrated on the coasts, that the Midwest is a patent destination and innovation destination. We're certainly seeing that across the board with the way our manufacturing sector is excelling and continuing to double down despite the challenges of the last year. We're seeing this in our aerospace diversification throughout southeastern Michigan, as well as the ways in which we're making our way through this current chip shortage. But it's really important to make sure that we've got localized and accessible dollars. And so the effort that I was pushing for as we were passing this legislation is to make sure that we are at the table and that we are showcased. And so I really want to honor all of you for being a part of what I get asked about in Washington, which is, how do you guys do it, right? How have you bested the expectations with our supply chain disruptions and the plight to supply chain resiliency, the way in which we're also exercising our workforce and ensuring that Industry 4.0 is accessible and available to our 21st century workforce. So my hat's off to all of you, and a big congratulations on producing this report, and to this panel that I am really looking forward to hearing from today. Believe it or not, your Congress people still want to listen and learn from the industrial leaders in our region. So it's a real privilege to be able to do that here with you today. Thank you so much, Tom.
Oh, thank you, Congresswoman Stevens. Just thrilled that you were able to join us today and take time out of your schedule to just really help our manufacturers come along for this digital journey, right? It's not optional, it's required. And so your push always means a lot to us. So thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, and every week, Tom, I'm doing Manufacturing Monday, and we got our finger on the pulse of what's driving this region forward. And I'll tell you, yesterday I was at Altair, right around the corner from you, and, waving hello, but also seeing this incredible proliferation of new technologies and applications at play, making our manufacturers more efficient and more successful. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Love it. So now I'd like to introduce our other panelists. Sharif Markabi is Executive Vice President of R&D at Magna International, where he manages Magna's innovation and new product strategy and development. Sharif has 30 years of experience in the automotive and technology industries, and previously worked in leadership innovation roles with both Ford Motor Company and Uber. Thank you, Sharif. Jeff Hall. Thank you. Jeff Hall is Senior Director of Technology and Strategic Sales at Omron, a global leader in industrial automation. Hall has experience in the automotive and digital factory space, as well as the food and commodity, semiconductor, infrastructure and logistics, and life sciences verticals. And prior to joining Omron, Jeff held a leadership role with Siemens USA. Thanks for joining, Jeff.
Thank you.
And finally, David Skippers is Dave.
Okay.
Dave Skippers is Assistant Professor of Automotive Cybersecurity and Cybersecurity Chair of Information Technology Decision Sciences at Walsh College. Dave is one of our Tech and Industry Report authors, and every year produces such excellent work. He brings decades of industry experience in information technology, cybersecurity, and project management. So at Walsh, Dave created Walsh's Advanced Team-Based Attack Defend Techniques class, and also created Walsh's Automotive Cybersecurity concentration. So he's definitely a guy you want to know in the auto industry. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Dave, of course. So a couple audience instructions. If time permits, and I hope it will, because I'll make sure to see if that can happen. We'll try to get to some audience questions. So to ask a question, click on the little Q&A function below and type it in, and we will try to get to those questions at all. But to kick the panel off, I think I'm going to go to Sharif first. And here's the question, Sharif. So in this year's tech report, we focus on the importance of sort of a holistic Industry 4.0 approach in how you think about these technologies. There's so many new and emerging technologies related to Industry 4.0. And we know that integrating all these technologies together really allows you to unlock the full potential of smart manufacturing. So based on your experience, which technologically important technologies, right? The intersections, if we think about how they're going to come together, what technology intersections do you see as having the biggest impact in the near future? And Dave and Jeff, why don't you think about this too, because I'll come to you next, but where do you think, what's having the biggest impact out there, Sharif?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for inviting me. And as you're aware, I'm representing Magna International, which is a global manufacturer and R&D or designer of automotive and technology components. So I just wanted to highlight that while I am located in Southeast Michigan and obviously a big proponent of growth in this region, Magna is an international company. And if you look at any other manufacturer, you'll find that most of them are international. They think globally. So do I, and so do we. One of the things that we feel is so important to grow the strengths of manufacturing in Michigan and around the globe is to make sure that the technology we're using is helping an attribute of manufacturing. I mean, there's the general things like improving quality, improving throughput, reducing inventory, those types of things. So we really have to pick the technology that would yield results in that area. We think that's really fundamental. But I would share, I mean, that's a really tough question because there's so many technologies that are lending themselves in doing that in manufacturing. Some of them could also apply to product, but especially focused on manufacturing. And my choice would be for this connectivity. Mm-hmm. That is a technology that already exists. Many of us use in our personal life. And when you connect manufacturing, you're able to do things remotely and you're able to do things from any location. Of course, that comes with its own headache. I would just share that one of the challenges in that is a one-word word is the culture or the mindset. Along with that, technology needs to be openness in manufacturing for people to see what's happening in a specific operation. So that's really important. And the second challenge I would share, which is something I'm sure we'll talk about today, is cybersecurity. You can't have open connectivity where anyone can do anything they want to it, because then that defeats the purpose. So I would, my call, there are a lot of technologies, my call would be connectivity.
Excellent. You know, and I'm going to get to Dave in a moment because Dave is one of the world leaders in cybersecurity for industry. So we're going to have a good conversation with him. Jeff, coming from the technology company perspective, you're also a manufacturer as Omron, but concur with Sharif? Is there other areas that we should be focused on?
Connectivity is always an incredibly important attribute for companies to make sure, and in Sharif's case, they have to do it on their product as well as in their manufacturing operations, right? So they kind of see it from both sides. And we're no different. You know, if I was going to pick a couple of technologies that are impactful, that intersect, it would be traceability, which means marking of components and products. You know, verifying those codes are built to a standard or printed to a standard, embedded to a standard, verifying, reading those codes and communicating those codes. So the communication there again is connectivity, right, up to an IT infrastructure where the data can be used for the betterment of the organization and ultimately for their customers. And then where that intersects with robotics, advanced robotics, I think is you have to improve your material flow through your plants and have to augment a workforce that's very challenged right now in terms of availability, I think those lend themselves to being very, very critical in operations today. And again, is kind of a play off of what Sharif said with connectivity.
Yeah. So Dave, you bring, and thank you, Jeff. So you bring an academic hat to the party here. So what did Sharif and Jeff say that resonated with you, or what did you hear that maybe you wanted to embellish on?
I would say I agree with their commentary. Specifically, I'm going to hone in on the connectivity. I'm going to focus that into like 5G, the promise of 5G. And I think when we look at AI, ML, all the other things, digital twins, all of the different convergent technologies that we have that are coming into play for Industry 4.0, that connectivity in near real-time data communication is the catalyst for most of the others. All right. So I would say, yes, I think that's accurate. I totally agree with the statements. I would add I'll say an additional layer onto that. And I would say with the importance of connectivity and how it impacts all of the other things that you can do, doing connectivity correctly and securely is extremely important. So what I'm saying there is that, you know, if I have a problem in my AI algorithm or my ML algorithm, I have to just kind of fix it there, right? If I have a connectivity issue that's actually, I have too much latency or delays in my communication models, that actually has sweeping impacts across all of the different opportunities and technologies that I have. So I would say, yes, I agree with connectivity and I'll say the promise of 5G and all of this additional connectivity in near real time that is coming into play for Industry 4.0. And, you know, my plea is take the time to make sure that you implement that correctly, because if you have to go back later and redo that and figure it out later, it's going to be, I'll use the term, much more painful later in the process. So
let me ask the three of you this, and anybody can jump in on this, kind of follow up to one. So we have a lot of participants on this call. There's participants from OEs, there's participants from tier ones, and many of the participants are going to be in small manufacturers, 3, 4, 5 tier down. What, you know, based on your experience, we all sort of swim in a larger ecosystem. What would you recommend for the smallest manufacturers, what they should focus on if they're just beginning their digital transformation journey? What's some wisdom you can impart that says, you know, what should they do? And Sharif, any ideas on that?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's building a little bit on what we talked about, but if I'm a small manufacturer and I'm starting off, I would first connect all my machines. That is connectivity. So step one, physical action, connect the machines. 2, make sure their cybersecurity is implemented, and you could do anything yourself, but there are packages out there that people can do. And 3, I would look at what would improve the manufacturing of whatever you're making. So if you're making something with a few machines and you want to improve first time through, or you want to improve quality, or you want to, again, reduce inventory, whatever you want to do, make sure it's okay when people talk about Industry 4.0, there's so many different technologies. Pick the ones that matter to you. Don't try to do everything yourself, because first of all, if you're starting off, you can't do everything yourself. So you could probably, there are a lot of companies out there, some in Michigan, and to be honest, some outside of Michigan, but you could get some packages to help your manufacturing.
Yeah. So Jeff, let me follow up with Sharif on that and say, is it expensive anymore? I mean, I hear prices are getting really reasonable where, you know, you can connect all your machines. Price is not an obstacle anymore. Is that a true statement? Have I heard that correctly?
I think that's accurate. I think the challenge that especially small manufacturers have is exactly what Sharif mentioned, is that there's this ocean of technologies and products and solutions out there. So especially the small manufacturers, although it applies to anybody, have to decide what value they want to deliver, and how to prioritize that, and then build their strategy around doing it in more of a sequential method. Because again, it's, you know, Industry 4.0 means 100 different things to 100 people, right? So to understand what your priorities are, what you want to deliver, and then go seek out, you know, the numerous automation companies that are out there that can help you achieve the results that you desire, and ultimately help your customers achieve results as well.
Yeah. So Jeff, let me stick with you for this next question. So we've learned a lot over the past 15 months in this whole COVID crisis about how disruptions can impact the manufacturing industry. You know, Automation Alley is a World Economic Forum advanced manufacturing hub. We participate in all these discussions, and resiliency and agility is top of mind with all these manufacturers around the world. And they're starting to reevaluate just in time versus just in case. They certainly don't want to be inefficient, but they want to have some resiliency and agility built into the system so they're not dependent 100% in any one area or plan or something. So, how do we switch the model from this just in time to be more resiliency, to be more resilient and more agile? What can manufacturers do to sort of go down that path?
Sure. From a manufacturing and automation perspective, the systems operating in plants today have done exactly what they're programmed and trained to do, and that's optimizing for minimal waste and material handling time. So if we look at a just-in-case scenario, it might be to look at adjusting the optimization, which means altering your technology priorities for different factors, maybe like nonlinear production, where each process might not be able to be achieved in the same order, but the end product has to have all the processes completed to meet the quality standards and to push the product out the door in an acceptable manner. So, that's it's a challenge, but you're right. It's kind of like a company doing disaster planning. You hope it never happens, but you have to really plan accordingly for it to possibly happen, because especially in today's world, I mean, who thought a freighter was going to stick in the middle of a canal and block shipping and cause all the delays, right? So it's very difficult to manage to prevent those things because they're going to happen. It's about risk mitigation, I think, is critical.
Yeah, I heard a thing on CNBC yesterday that they're thinking of just scrapping that whole ship out, $500 million. Crazy. So because it can't go through the canal. So at any rate, Sharif, so following up with what Jeff just said, I'd be really interested in Magna's take on just in time versus just in case. Have you seen your thought process in the C-suite with you shift, or is it still really maximized for ultimate efficiency?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, what are you seeing? I'd love to get.
I think it's a tough question because we can't forget that there's a benefit of just in time and minimizing waste and everything else. And the ultimate benefit to the consumer, just being pragmatic, is the price of vehicles. We try to minimize the price of vehicles for the consumer, and there's that benefit. So when we shift into making sure we're resilient, we have to pick and choose. And that's what's happening, is we're picking and choosing what areas we want to be more resilient while we keep the efficiency model that we have. Because it's not only helping the manufacturers or the price of vehicles and technology, which is very useful for the consumer, very good from a safety, from all the aspects of it, whether you could talk about electric vehicles or autonomous vehicles or driver assistance. There's so many technologies that go into those areas that we want to get to 100%, meaning everyone has it in their vehicle, which means it needs to be at low cost. So it needs to be efficient. It needs to be. So to be honest with you, I think that the industry is in transition because we want to keep the just in time while picking and choosing the areas. I mean, earlier we talked about chip shortages and other things like that. I mean, there are areas that we need to be more resilient than the past, but let's not forget that the reason we are successful as an industry is to get the continuing, and many of us may think that the price of vehicles is too high. It could be higher if you look at other industries. So that's one of the things that we focus on.
Right. So, and good answer on that for sure. Dave, let me come to you for a minute. So let's talk about cybersecurity, right in your wheelhouse. Cybersecurity, as we know, was big in the news in the last 2 months with the ransomware attacks that we saw in the oil and gas industry. It's just crazy. So how do we mitigate the cyber risk in this, what we're calling this connected industry? Either you're going to connect your machines, you're going to connect your machines to your head office, you're going to connect your head office to other manufacturers. How do we handle, and you have remote workers all over the place now, all connecting into your systems. How in the world are we going to manage all of this? And how has this complicated cyber risk for companies?
Well, I'll say COVID-19, obviously, I'll say exposed a number of weaknesses, right? Especially across the different sectors, be that manufacturing industry, you name the industry, we've seen a lot of issues there. One of the things, so I would say a couple of things in regards to cyber risk mitigation. So one, and I'll say I'm going to try not to spoil everything we have in the report, Tom. So I'll put some ticklers. I'll put some ticklers out there, but I won't take up a ton of time. So first up, one of the things I'll say I think we need to step back when we talk about cyber risk mitigation and look at is leadership needs to lay out what are my vision, goals, strategies, so that we can build tactics and deployments. All right. So really at the leadership level, I think, in my opinion, people get too fixated on, are we patching? Do we have the right firewall? Do we have the right security component? And I think realistically, in some ways, if that's your focus, you've lost your way. And I say that because one, you have to define what is important to protect. So what do I mean with that? I'm gonna blend into a couple of different areas here. So the traditional trust model that has been exploited for years now is that I have a firewall, I protect everything. Once we authenticate you, we let you in, and now we trust you. Now, within an attacker perspective, my goal is to identify what you value as your strength, and I'm going to flip that and exploit it with you. They have been doing that very effectively for a number of years now. So what happens is, and let's look at COVID-19 for a minute. It's a good, I'll say, litmus test on where industries are in general. We had to massively deploy people to a remote workforce quickly. What did that mean? So from an attack surface perspective, we saw the attackers and the cyber criminal gangs, they went typically what has been patched for years now in the corporate environments. I have home equipment that has not been patched. I can deploy old exploits. I can compromise your worker at home, and I can pivot into your infrastructure, and I can continue to gain more pivoting and compromises until I get to a domain server and I get, let's say, God access, and I can do what I want. What I would say is, now, where am I going with this? We want to flip that model into a cyber resiliency model. We want to start thinking about what is most important to defend within our organization. All right. So this is very much aligning with what is being called the zero trust model. All right. So instead of saying, I'm going to protect everything, the reality is, if you're not a global organization, if you're a medium to small size manufacturer, you have limited resources in money, time, and people. So you have to sit down and say, what are the most important things for me to protect? In that vision, strategies, tactics that you build are going to then help you define, how do I deploy technologies to protect what I have? You may also make decisions on, if I have to decide in the heat of the moment, what is most important to maintain and potentially have be compromised based off limited response times, what to focus on. So to me, I think those are some of the changes that we need to change. I think that, obviously we can go back and we can look at all of the major breaches. There's typically common cyber hygiene and common patching issues. There's all these typical reoccurring themes. I would argue that is because we have not built a good vision, strategies, and tactics. And then, of course, with that, you build effective processes that maintain your security. And that very much, I'll give a plug for CMMC. If you're in the DoD manufacturing space, you very much should be familiar with CMMC. They very much are focusing on processes and lessons learned as you go forward. So this whole concept of creating vision and strategy to build effective processes and mature them over time is very much what they are defining. And I would concur are very much the core of where we need to go so that we know how to deploy and what to protect.
Yeah, well, thanks for scaring the hell out of me. And now we can move on to a better place. Maybe I'm going to not call on you again, Dave, and I'm going to go. No, of course not. It's something that is so critical, and we don't really think about. And I love the zero trust model, because I think for a long time that's been needed. So Sharif, let me come back to you because you opened up the segment by talking about culture. And I'm a big fan of that sort of mindset, that it's not about the technology. It's always about the culture in the organization and understanding what you have to do. And so to hear that from someone like yourself, who really is trying to corral such a large organization, let me ask you this: how do companies ensure that they're adopting a culture that fosters innovation and allows all these Industry 4.0 technologies to flourish? How do they do it?
I will tell you, it's not easy. So there's so many different areas to focus on, but one of the most important things in if we talk about manufacturing and things like connectivity and being more open and everybody can have access, is to create a culture where it is not punitive, meaning it is okay to have issues. It's very difficult to do in manufacturing, maybe easier to do. And if you look at the West Coast or East Coast companies that are less capital intensive, manufacturing by definition is capital intensive, so the room for error is low. That's why the culture becomes even more important, because if you are penalizing someone for being open and being connected and using the technology, you probably won't see it again from that manufacturer. So the part of the culture and the companies that create a culture of innovation in manufacturing is to make sure that it's okay to try things and you can minimize the risk by trying. One of the things we call at Magna is proof of concept, or you try something at a low risk and then you deploy it as you prove that it's successful. So those are things that we could do in the culture. And the other thing about cultures in general, and this is while it does apply to manufacturing, it does go across the board, is to make sure that, you know, every innovation I have seen in my career has been bottom up. Somebody would come in with an idea and they would come up and they would introduce the idea, and all of a sudden it becomes a new business or a new opportunity or whatever. So we can also ask the question is, how do we create the culture where someone would be open? So some of the things we are doing is the traditional things of, okay, you're incentivized to do that. I don't necessarily believe in, okay, every Friday you have half a day to innovate. I mean, you want to innovate all the time, and you want to create that culture. So I've been exposed to, culture workshops and how do we get the management team to provide and promote the culture of innovation. But the end result will have to be what is coming up from the bottom up. And for manufacturing, I would just emphasize that try it small and then go big if you're capital intensive, but you need the culture of the management team to incentivize that and to be okay with that, just to be okay with it. If you look at some of the surveys I've seen around what is the most important thing in innovation in an organization, it's the management commitment. It's that it matters to management. It matters to the people that are running the place.
Excellent. So Jeff, I'm going to diverge from our talking points because I want to ask an audience question, and I think it's right up your alley. So Mark Sobolski asks, shop floors are covered with old legacy equipment, often tied to old operating systems and code. Is there any new tech to handle this challenge without completely replacing everything?
Pretty open-ended, but I understand the point. Yeah, there's probably a multitude of options that you have. One of the things just interesting that Sharif mentioned the proof of concept term, because I'm sitting in our proof of concept center in Novi, Michigan, and we have several of these throughout the country, and actually a number of them throughout the world. And one of the things that we do is evaluate those kinds of systems to say, okay, if we have to go from system A to something that's upgraded to system B or to current technology, how do we do it? And then let's try it before we actually have to deploy it, because the cost of failure is expensive in the manufacturing environment, right? So we want to mitigate that risk and try to help customers choose a technology that maybe is stepped rather than going all in from, from an old green screen type of technology or DOS-based systems that are still out there to something that's current. So, is there a single solution?
Mhm.
No, but I think the most important thing you can do is engage with somebody that understands the legacy system, and then somebody that understands how you can migrate to a newer technology that can help maintain production while you're in the process of upgrading and changing to a technology that will take you further in the future.
Yeah, good. So Dave, I want to come back to you. So it's critical in my mind that the talent pipeline has to keep pace with this rapidly changing manufacturing industry. All the digitization's coming in, all the new technology. It's not blue collar, it's new collar, I've heard. So how should industry and academia be working together to ensure the right skills are being taught? And then after Dave, I want to come to Sharif and Jeff as well, because I think this is sort of one of those capstone questions that I think can be helpful. So think about it and let me know, but I'll start with Dave.
Yeah, to start off with, I think, there's a lot of different ways that people in industry can get involved, I'll say, especially with academia. So say, Tom, as you know, for instance, Walsh, we run advisory boards. These are great ways. So within our department, so we're information technology, decision sciences. I'll say we're business STEM. That's, I'll say, the short version of how I like to explain that. We have multiple boards where we actually invite in industry players. We have them review the skill bases that we're developing within those programs. We're very much about hands-on learning and practical application. So we want to make sure that people are actually graduating with skill sets that are needed in industry. I think what you'll find is that your medium to small size college players are going to be in a different position than, I'll say, the big research R1 universities that are out there. So you can get on advisory boards. I would say one of the other ways to engage is internships as well. And I would say reach out to colleges or universities that have the subject matter expertise for the skill sets that you're looking for. Not every institution is going to have necessarily the exact skill set that you may need. So you're going to want to, I'll say, shop around a bit. I think those are very, very good ways to begin. One of the other things I'll say, and I'll speak specifically, I can't speak for all the institutions, but I can speak for what we're doing at Walsh. We're having conversations with different industry groups of various sizes about how do we help fulfill their training needs. Now, those needs may be skill development from an typical academic style, because sometimes they want it to count both for a degree program later if those employees want to do that. We're also working with some on specific professional development training as well. I would say, I think you'll find that the model in higher ed is starting to shift. I think the ones that realize that we're going to have to operate outside of traditional degree programs. Let's face it, we've got a large number of people in the workforce today. As Industry 4.0 sweeps through, it's going to have significant impacts across to the manufacturing industry and in many different areas within the organizations that are in manufacturing. So a lot of retraining is going to happen. I would say by pairing up and finding the institutions with the SMEs and expertise that you need, I think that they will engage with you, or I'll say at least the ones that want to thrive. I'll leave it at that. If you can't find anybody, call me.
I'm going to give the last word on this question to Sharif and ask Jeff next. So how do we get academia and industry working together? What do you think we need to be?
Well, I think Dave had some really good comments on the academia side. On the collaboration needs two different thinkers, and I would just look at it from an industry standpoint. We find valuable academia support for some of the POCs or proof of concepts or innovation or things that we're doing. And we collaborate with multiple universities around the globe, actually, not just in Michigan, on specific projects. And I think one of the comments that were really strong that Dave made is you need to know as an academia what you're good at and what you want to develop. And as an industry, we look for that. I just wanted to share that. We actually look for, hey, this particular entity, they're starting to develop into this particular area of manufacturing, and we need, let's just use robotics as an example. I mean, just as an example. Software for robotics. Robotics existed for a long time. Who's good at that? And some of the universities and some of the academia is really building up the capabilities in that space. So we look for that. I hate to use the word, the Midwest versus East Coast or West Coast. Or anywhere around the globe, the weather is actually a factor, because depending on the success of how many students come into the industry, in some cases, there's a lot of benefits in our view to the Midwest and having people that are really strong on the technology side, because they tend to want to stay in the Midwest, which is a great thing for us. So there are a lot of factors in that, but certainly having the capability as an academia that ties to what the industry is looking for, staying on top of what is emerging, what are the technologies, what is everybody looking for, and then creating projects. The best way to collaborate is around projects, and things will grow from there.
Yeah, thank you. So Jeff, any comments on that?
I think both Dave and Sharif summed it up. The one thing I would say that I've been privy to that's been a big advantage and eye-opening for me is, we're on several advisory boards. We're very active with engaging with universities. We have a very large engagement with the University of Michigan Dearborn locally, and many other schools like them to support robotics and technology developments and implementations and workforce development. But I've also had the privilege of going out and judging senior projects at some of these schools. And I would really encourage companies to have their management teams, their engineering teams, and engage really people at all levels to go do that, because the resourcefulness of these students with the budgets they have to implement technologies is really eye-opening. And it drives people like us, like manufacturers, to say, wow, we think we don't want to do that. Maybe it's a cost issue, maybe it's whatever it is. And it's really, really enlightening. And you talk about creating a culture of Industry 4.0 and awareness. It goes both ways. Industry can learn a lot from academia if you get engaged and stay engaged.
Excellent. So we talked about academia. What role can government play in all of this? Is there a role for government to play? I mean, we heard from Congresswoman Stevens, and I know I work with her, consistently on getting the federal government to pay attention to this digital divide between those countries that are focused on manufacturing and digitization and those that perhaps aren't. And down to the local government level, where you have the state of Michigan and then county government. They're all focused on trying to stay ahead of these changes. Is there a role for government to play, and what would that role be in your eyes, guys? Maybe we'll start with Sharif this time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a tough question. But I do think that there's definitely room for growth for research and development funding for universities, because I think there's a lot of great things that come out of that. Meaning that could be incubation for startups or for ideas in manufacturing, and the industry will be naturally attracted to that. So we do think that research and development in manufacturing and making sure that's a priority is something a government could definitely work within the state of Michigan and other entities in research and advanced.
Anything to add, Jeff, Dave?
I would say that the government could help us in supporting and promoting national and global standards that promote and enforce interoperability of multiple manufacturers, components, and systems, as well as security, something up Dave's alley, security measures and security standards, so that as manufacturers deploy multiple levels of technology, multiple suppliers of technology, they can have confidence that they're going to operate within a given set of guidelines, no matter where those products come from or no matter where they're deployed. I think that would be something that we could use an improvement in and some more oversight.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely, Sharif.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head, Jeff. because no manufacturer wants to operate within a unique set of standards of a state or a city. So we'd love to continue to see a standardization across different states, across, even you could take that internationally. It only helps because then it allows the manufacturer to work in one place and then applies to other places. You're not spending the resources to develop things uniquely for, and no, you could argue some markets are bigger than others, but by standardizing, you could actually go everywhere, which is something we strive for at Magna.
Excellent. So I have a couple questions from the audience, and they kind of go together. Wei Wan asked, Industry 4.0 is promising. One of the challenges is how to seamlessly connect factory IT with OT. So you got the front of the house and the back of the house, trying to get them connected together. That was one question. And then Kazar had another question that was similar. It said, look, in this age of COVID, supply chain has been hit very, very hard. How in the world do we navigate this Industry 4.0 transition when we've been hit so hard? If you take both those together, it's first, let's talk about IT and OT and what's happening in that realm. And does anybody have any comments on how you get the back of the house and the front of the house? Because typically, especially in a larger corporation, Sharif would know that, sometimes the power is different in between the two of them, and they're fighting for who's going to control what. Or, I know that's not, we don't want to talk about that, but that does happen in big corporations where there's power struggles. How do we do that, guys? What do we do with IT and OT?
I'll say, so actually, I think last year's report, Tom, we touched on this a little bit on IT and OT, and we talked about the convergence of the teams. So I'll say we have to understand traditionally IT and how IT does cybersecurity is realistically fundamentally different in its approach than how OT operates for cybersecurity. So those are two very different houses, so as to speak. They actually, even if you look at from an academic perspective, the degree programs, the training, the approaches, everything, it all very much comes from two very different philosophical standpoints.
So how do you reconcile that? You just said, look, they come from two different worlds. I think that's probably the crux of his question. How do you reconcile that? Is there a mechanism to reconcile that?
I'll say I'm not going to speak for the industry reps. I'll let them, speak on their side. I'll say from my perspective, what we internally are looking at is we are starting to blend in operational technology or physical cybersecurity into our cybersecurity degree programs. So they're getting both sides of the house as they go through cybersecurity training and schooling, and as far as practical and hands-on when we do that with them. We have to, in my opinion, it's best to converge those teams. Now, how is that going to manifest in industry? How is that going to manifest in a particular organization? A lot of that's going to have to do, and I'll bounce back to Sharif's comment on culture and how they want to integrate that. Realistically, if you have two very different competing teams for cybersecurity, you have two different priorities and you have two different visions and strategies and tactics, right? So realistically, I would argue, I think there needs to be efforts to unify those. I think as we look educationally and academically going forward, programs need to start to merge those more into a hybrid approach, so that they at least comprehend both sides of the house. They may be stronger in one than the other, but then they're more adaptable. They understand if I'm securing and defending equipment that is OT, I have a very different process to do that. I may be dealing with old equipment. It has limitations. How do I deal with that? Pragmatically, and as well as I'm also securing data on a server. Again, when we start to have that run or converged with one vision, then, in my opinion, we'll make better utilization of the tactical implementations that we provide. But again, I'll go back to Sharif's comment. I think it has to do with the people culture portion. I think that will be the key to solving the IT OT issue.
Yeah, I would just add, it's okay. I would, this is not, I'm not offering a solution. I'm just saying that adding to what Dave was talking about, every company is organized differently. It has a set of unique challenges. In the case of Magna, for example, we have over 300 manufacturing locations around the globe. So, and we are a decentralized organization, meaning that you can operate independently if you find there's a better solution for you to get the efficiency up and the cost down and things like that. That I agree with the comments that it does help tremendously the convergence and also the culture. I just think that it's different in different environments, and every company will have to deal with it themselves. And we are in the process of doing the same thing we just talked about.
Yeah. So let me, that's a great question, a great answer. So let me ask the final question for each of you. And this is one that is for the thoughtful answer here. So what do you think if we take our ecosystem here, which is our Michigan ecosystem, which includes Ontario and Ohio and Indiana, and we make this Midwestern manufacturing ecosystem? What's the greatest risk to manufacturing in this area in the next 12 months? And conversely, if you can think of it, what's the greatest opportunity? What's the thing we need to really pay attention to? And where's an area that we can be really hopeful and build upon? So let me start with Jeff first on that.
It's a kind of an obvious answer, but I think the raw material and component shortages for the next 12 months are still going to wreak havoc on a lot of industries and a lot of companies. I think it's unavoidable, unfortunately. But people are dealing with the best they can, and obviously people are trying to build capacity into the system. I just think for the next 12 months, it's we're going to be constrained somewhat.
Yeah. Any opportunities you see? Anything you're hopeful on?
I think what the pandemic has accelerated was the emphasis on automation and what factories need to automate, not only from a throughput and quality standpoint, but from a human safety standpoint. So for us as manufacturers of automation equipment and systems, the ability to be able to go help customers at a heightened sense of awareness of that they have to automate their processes, and allowing us to help them show them ways to improve, to automate, to build quality, all those things. I think there's just this heightened awareness, and I think that's the opportunity for not only for us as the suppliers, but for them, because it will accelerate their improvements in the processes, where maybe without that heightened sense of need, they might not be so quick to do it.
Sharif, what keeps you up at night?
A lot of things. But regarding the manufacturing, I think the risk is other startups and companies outside of the Midwest are going to create ideas to disrupt manufacturing that we've known for 100 years or so in the Midwest. And the way to, on the other side, the opportunity is there are plenty of opportunities. When you look at Industry 4.0, and just taking an example that Jeff talked about with automation or robotics, start creating startups and companies that can take existing robotics capital, meaning the hardware and the robotics that make the manufacturing thrive, and adding some of the technologies to it, like software and AI and other things, and solving a problem in manufacturing. I'd love to see more in the Midwest, to be honest, because there are companies on the coasts that are involved in that, which goes back to the risk, because then they have the opportunity to disrupt this. There are a lot of good things, and I'll mention again, I know we talked about culture before. I think one of the strengths that are really strong in the Midwest and in Michigan is work ethic in manufacturing. If somebody wants to make, and this goes across industries, and we do see manufacturers prefer to come to the Midwest because you can rely on a labor workforce, you can do certain things versus some other areas of the country or the globe. So there are plenty of opportunities to thrive on, and lots of great things that can happen and continue to happen in the Midwest.
Awesome. All right, Dave, you got 1 minute to bring us home. So what do you think is the best opportunity and threat? And we'll wrap up the panel and put it in the can, so to speak, as they say.
Okay, I'll try to go quick. So I'm gonna piggyback off Sharif's comments on culture. I think a culture that in leadership that embraces change is probably one of the, I'll say if we don't embrace Industry 4.0 in the innovation that it needs, my concern would be that as a Midwest region, we fall behind. We don't continue to, I'll say, maintain our role or expand that. So I see that as both one of the biggest threats, because as Sharif was covering before, we want to start to look at things differently. We want to see things differently and see opportunities we haven't seen before. So that culture with leadership to embrace change and find new ways will be, in my opinion, one of the ways we either excel or we fall behind. How well we embrace that as a region.
Great, thank you. So I want to thank Sharif, Jeff, Dave, wonderful panel, loved the conversation. For everybody who's tuning in to this program, you'll get an email from us that will grant you access to the tech report. It is live today. Lots of academic research in there. Just love it. I will remind our audience that we have our Integrate conference, which is the last time we did it live, we had well over 1,000 people all get together talking about Industry 4.0 technologies, exactly what we're doing here. Great, great time. It's back live. It's at TCF. It's October 19th. We're all going to be there in person. And if you're a manufacturer in Michigan, you get, courtesy of the MEDC, you get 1 free ticket. So there's no excuse not to come out and talk to people like Sharif and Jeff and Dave and see them live and really pick their brain. And it's just a wonderful time. So I encourage y'all to be there. Thank you guys again for your time today. And with that, have a wonderful afternoon, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.